Yeah, it sounds really bad, especially because she had been telling people that her baby was with the child's birth father, which turned out to not be true, and that she was with her grandmother. Let's bring in our guest who is standing by to discuss this. We have criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf. And Jeffrey, the changing stories are really problematic for Megan Boswell. But in this clip, if it's true, if this was a sudden infant death situation, then what can the defense do to try and change the minds of the jury, which perhaps right now is not looking very good?
Yeah, it is tough to go from lying to now we're telling the truth and now you need to believe her, and this is a SIDS death, a sudden infant death syndrome death. Because SIDS deaths are very common, and most times people don't know that they're going to be in trouble in a SIDS death, that they're going to be facing potential child abuse, neglect charges or something along those lines, but often they are. And if you know that, you might the police come to talk to you about it, and you may be prone to tell a lie and try and cover things up in some fashion. And so that's what the defense is trying to do here, is they're trying to say she was scared. She didn't know what to do. She's a young mother, and the police are investigating her. The police are looking for this baby, and all she is a scared young woman whose baby died mysteriously, because SIDS deaths are unfortunately all too common amongst young, uneducated parents who don't know how to care for their children. And she just didn't know what to do here. And this was a tragic death that was not any form of murder or manslaughter or anything of the sort, but in reality was just a tragic accident. And they're trying to show just how sad she was in that moment.
Yeah, argument to make.
Yeah, that's what the defense counsel is going to try to do here. All right, Jeffrey, thank you so much.
We know we'll hear from you throughout the rest of the day. Let's bring in, though, our guest who is still with us this hour, criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf. I don't even know where to start, Jeffrey. This was a motion hearing that had a lot of big moments in it. But let's start there at the last thing that Matt talked about, that the full video might somehow be reappearing because it may be in someone's iCloud account. And we're post a trial where Karen Reed could have been found guilty, and yet there's still new evidence out there.
Yeah, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me what's going on with the police department in this case. And I think probably it doesn't cease to amaze the viewers either, because we keep seeing things going on with the detectives and the police in this case that just fly in the face of everything that we're led to believe, right? That they're going to always do the right thing, that they're always going to turn the evidence over to the defense. But anybody that actually works in the criminal justice system on the side of the defense knows that that's not necessarily the case. It is overwhelmingly true that most prosecutors and most police do things the right way. That is true. It is the majority of them, but it is certainly not 100% of the time. And 9 times out of 10, when it is happening, you have these 1 out of 10 prosecutions where you find out later that there was some evidence, or in the middle of trial that there was some evidence that wasn't turned over. And it just brings into question the entire criminal justice system. And it makes people wonder how many times it's happening and we don't find out. And so it just is not the right way to go about it, because if they have the right person, why do they have to hide evidence? Why don't they just turn everything over? Because if you're doing it the right way and you're arresting the right person, you don't need to hide evidence. And if your cases are so true and they are so correct, prosecute it the right way, police it the right way, and then you won't have people looking at you sideways.
Judge Canody also made another ruling today talking about the expert. The expert is able to come in for the defense, talking about when that Google search was done. She's saying, I'm going to let the jury decide this. It's going to be up to them, the trier of fact. I think that was a good ruling there.
Yeah, absolutely. A qualified expert should be able to go to the jury, and then the jury can decide whether that expert opinion is correct. And the state can have their own qualified expert go to the jury as well. And if they disagree, the jury gets to decide which of the 2 qualified experts analyzed the data correctly. They present their information, and whoever is more persuasive, whoever did their work correctly, dotted the I's, crossed the T's, did the math correctly, will be believed by the jury, who, as was just said, is the trier of fact, not the judge, and not the prosecutor, and not the defense. And so you present your expert, as long as they are qualified and able to be put on as an expert, the jury gets to decide which of them is correct, because often the prosecution and defense experts don't agree. But that doesn't mean that one of them should be disallowed from being put in front of the jury.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I really liked what you said earlier about if you have the right person, if it's the right arrest and they actually did it, then turn the information over. But we're even seeing in the testimony of Brian Higgins, someone who was in that house. The defense says that the house is where John O'Keefe died. And Higgins turned over some screenshots from his phone of his interactions with Karen Reed. But we're now finding out that he made a phone call because it's caught on video. So again, that will be new evidence in a new trial that didn't come up in the first trial. How problematic do you think that is, keeping in mind that Brian Higgins got rid of his SIM card before investigators got to his phone?
I think it's going to be problematic for the prosecution because when you have a second trial, the transcript of the first trial can be used to impeach people. And so when something wasn't brought up and when something wasn't turned over previously, you as a defense attorney can bring that up, that you testified in the first trial and you never mentioned this phone call. And here is your transcript where you never mentioned it. Go ahead and read through this testimony, raise your hand when it says you mentioned that you made a phone call that night. Oh, I don't see that you raised your hand. Is that because you never bothered to mention it when this case was brought to trial the first time? Okay, thank you. And so anytime you hold back information, it's going to hit you in the face, especially in a second trial.
Absolutely. Jeffrey, thank you so much. We're going to get in a quick break and going to have more from the baby Evelyn murder trial for Megan Boswell. That's taking place in Tennessee. We'll bring that to you when we come back. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice. This criminal defense attorney, Jeffrey Wolf. Jeffrey, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is this interrogation video that we have watched of Megan. When she is talking about what she says happened to the baby, she's not looking at the detective. She's talking about her baby being dead, eyes closed. But yeah, not once is she looking up at him. I mean, I don't know. Do you take anything away from that with the father talking about all the lies that she was telling?
I don't necessarily take anything away from that given her age. Quite frankly, I think it's a pretty intimidating circumstance to be in an interrogation room. We know how long they keep people in those rooms. We know how small they are. We know the relative age disparity between her and the detective. We know how extremely intimidating that circumstance can be for anyone, much less somebody as young as she is, who is really up against it in a circumstance like that, 2-on-1, the length of time she's there again. And so, no, I don't think not making eye contact, looking down, closing her eyes. I know she's telling a lot of lies there, but I also know she's very scared given what she's going to admit later about those lies. So I don't put a lot of stock in her body language or where she's looking while she's talking to them now.
Yeah, a really difficult case all around. Let's go into the courtroom now. Jeffrey, thank you for that analysis, and please stand by. We understand that court is back in session. We have on the stand the same witness who was on the stand before the lunch break, Tennessee Child Protective Services Supervisor James Lewis. He's talking about the home that Megan's boyfriend lived in and where Megan was living at one point after or a little bit before the disappearance of baby Evelyn. Let's go back now. He's on cross-examination. Welcome back to Court TV Live. Let's return to Tennessee, where it's day 2 of the baby Evelyn murder trial that we've been following.
Defendant Megan Boswell faces multiple charges, including felony murder in the death of her daughter, 15-month-old Evelyn Boswell. She was found dead back in March of 2020 on a family member's property. If convicted, Megan could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. Still with us, criminal defense attorney Jeffrey Wolf. Jeffrey, thanks so much for sticking around and watching this case unfold. It's a big one for us here at Court TV. A lot of viewer interest in this one. It's a sad and tragic situation. Defense counsel trying to say that she did not murder him. Let's look at the other possibilities here. What are you taking away so far from what we've seen today?
Well, I mean, we're seeing a completely different Megan Boswell on this other video, right? We're seeing the manipulation that the prosecution is pointing to now, because we're not seeing somebody who appears to be desperately coming up with lies. We're seeing somebody who is presenting as a completely different young lady, just seamlessly weaving lie after lie after lie to this interviewer. And that starts to make a jury think that they're looking at a sociopath, that they're seeing somebody who can put on different masks and different faces depending on who they're talking to and what version of themselves they need to present. And so that makes it harder to have the tears when the confession ultimately is coming through that she was with the baby when the baby passed as anything other than crocodile tears. And so the defense is going to have some work ahead of them to show that the reason for these lies and the reason for putting on this mask was fear and not trying to get away with something here. Because this presentation of Megan Boswell is so starkly in contrast to somebody who looks scared.
And this video that we're about to watch when we go back into the courtroom, this is from February 18th. It's February 25 when she finally tells police that she was there and wrapped her child in that blanket after she died, and she tried CPR and it didn't work. Let's go back in. Again, we're listening to CPS. The supervisor is on the stand, and the interview they did with Megan Boswell is being played for the jury.